Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is According to Callus. And this is going to be episode 51. Yes, I have completed 50 episodes. And we are right in the middle of what is more likely. Today's episode is going to be Texit or collapse. Now, I don't mean this to be in the doom and gloom view. I just mean it to be, what is the more likely outcome of where we're at right now? If things continue on the path that we're on, is that something that is going to be something we need to be prepared for? Is this something that we need to look at with the eye to preventing it, or embracing it, or perhaps just preparing for it? Again, I'm not saying specifically what's going to happen because I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows. I can say with some amount of certainty what I might prefer to happen or what would be the least bad scenario to lay out. But to hear that, you're going to have to join me over in the podcast. And we're going to have another short episode, right? All 4 of these episodes are going to be done back to back. So they're going to be short, probably 10, 15 minutes long. And the idea is we're going to spur the idea. Number one, you have to kind of decide which side you fall more on. And then hopefully communicate back as to what do you think and why, and trying to have a little interaction in these episodes. So I will see you on the other side. Thank you. So now that I've laid that out, Texit or collapse. So, they talk about how we're such a divided nation, how the nation's never been this divided or this angry with itself since the Civil War. And woe is us. Well, yeah, I think in part they're right. I think there is a lot of angst. There's a little bit of anger, and there's certainly a lot of disappointment. And I can't help but think that there hasn't been some wholesale manipulation from many different angles. But that's just part of society. That's part of the way things have always been. I mean, if we lived in a kingdom, it's not like the king wouldn't be manipulating his people any more than the duke would be or the bishop, right? Everybody's pushing for their thing. But in today's modern age, we all carry a little device in our hand, which gives us 24/7 information. Much of it is obviously skewed. And if you look at it with the idea that you're getting skewed information, it makes it a little easier to function. It makes things more palatable or understandable. But one of the things we're dealing with, and this is going to tie into the follow-up that I'm going to do for tomorrow's episode, right? We can't go on the way we're going. It can't go forever. Sooner or later, somebody's going to tap out. There's just going to be an end. And it can either be a peaceful end, which I would prefer, or it could be a not so peaceful end, which I'm not excited about at all. But those are really apparently the only options. So if we assume that the resident makes it to the end of his first year and his next at bat stays in the role of do nothing but run her mouth, and Nancy doesn't toss them, things are going to continue on the path that they're on. And, while Q might have been interesting or entertaining, or maybe some people found some hope in that, I don't know. The reality is what's done is done. The damage is done. There's very little chance anything gets reversed. And for those people wishing and hoping that that was the case, I think you need to write that off. We need to start looking at what's next. We need to start focusing on what, if anything, can be done long term. What can we do to perhaps roll back some of the crazy? What can we do to turn the tide in 2022? And I don't think that all the answers are political. In fact, I could probably make a very strong argument that the easiest and best way to deal with bad government is to just ignore it. To just walk away, to check out, not partake. There's a certain segment of my reading and background, and certainly some of the podcasts I've listened to, that advocate just that. And while that sounds great, in some instances, it sounds very good. Boy, I would wish I could just check out, go move an hour or 2 or 3 outside of the big city, find myself a little plot of land. Maybe if I have money, I move to the mountains or find a place on the lake, grow my own food, raise some animals, just kind of check out. That sounds awesome a lot of times. But the reality is the vast majority of us can not likely get to that at any time soon. So that leaves the next best option, which is go down fighting. And what do I mean by go down fighting? I mean that we have to assume the battle has been laid out and they're only taking these actions because they're confident they're going to win. That doesn't mean they will win. It just means they're confident that they're going to win. And the easiest way for them to win is that we don't show up for that battle. That's always been one of my biggest critiques of conservatives, is that they always quit. They always walk away. They always concede. They give up so easily. Well, I, for one, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to go away. Even if I had $1 million and I could go move to the middle of the Rocky Mountains somewhere and find a place on a lake up there where I have plenty of fish and fowl and I can grow enough veggies that I don't really need to go to town for anything other than buy some gasoline or something. As awesome as that may sound, you can't live like that forever. That's just not a way that society was designed to be, and we are social animals. We were created to be part of a community. And being that we know this, we have to take advantage of the community around us. We have to take advantage of the people that we know. We have to build interaction and community and family in order to survive. So when you fail to do that, things come apart. Things fail. Things fall aside. We have managed to do that in families. We have managed to do that in local neighborhoods. We have managed to do that in whole communities. Now, I will admit, I am equally guilty. I am nothing special in this. I can make these observations, but it doesn't mean that I've been good about doing my part either. I made the reference on a Throwdown Thursday a few weeks ago about trying to meet 3 of your neighbors. Well, I have successfully met 3 neighbors now. I can't tell you their names. I've not done anything with them, but I have met them. They know that I live close by. I have finished distributing my paperwork, if you will, for the election that's coming up in here the next Saturday. And I've done my due diligence in the 4 months or whatever that I've lived in this house, and I'm trying to get to know my neighbors. But honestly, they're probably in the same exact boat that I am. They go to work, they put in their 10, 12-hour days. They come home, they want to hang out with their family or their wives in their homes. They go outside on the weekends to take care of their lawn and maybe do some upkeep and do some kind of activity with their family. They really don't have any time for their neighbors. I get it. It doesn't offend me. It doesn't bother me. But it causes that breakdown that I've talked about, right? There's people that have theorized that when they did away with front porches, they did away with the community. They theorize that, the back patio is ruining the community. What I would tell you is, my opinion is when both parents had to work, and when both parents putting in 8, 12-hour days all the time, that's what ruined the community. When you don't have time for a softball game after work, when you can't go to the bowling league, when you can't go to the park on a Saturday with your kids because you're too stinking tired from the rest of the week, that's what took that away. Now, some of that is just society. Some of that's progress, right? So you got to go drive your hour back and forth to work. And, most people are so spun up when they get home, they don't even want to see their family for a half an hour. Sometimes I feel that way. There's nothing wrong with that because that's life, man. That's adapting. But the reality is that's not the way it should be. That's not an ideal. That's not something we should be striving to do, yet we do every day. So because we've broke down the family, we've broke down the community we live in, we've also our churches. Now, I know some of you people couldn't care less about church, but our churches are a mess. Fathers make the difference in a lot of families. And when the father doesn't give a rat's behind about going to church or spending time with his family at church, what do you think happens? So we wreck our families, we wreck our communities, we wreck our churches. There's not a whole lot left. So then that brings us to the question of the day. Which is more likely? Do we have enough gumption, enough community, enough interest to bring about a Texit? Which is to say that Texas realizes, the majority of us anyway, that the country as a whole is unsustainable, that it's a mess, that it just is not feasible to continue the way we're going. And we just say, we're checking out. We're going to go do our own thing. We're going to make our stand alone. We're tired of being abused and used by those folks in D.C. Keeping in mind, we're still going to have to deal with our Austin swamp, but just for the purposes of discussion, that's option one. Or option two is collapse. The collapse continues. And, there's some people that, they hear the words collapse and they see red dawn. They hear the words collapse and they see the day after. I'm not necessarily suggesting that's the outcome of a collapse. What I'm suggesting is that we just become a society that's so disconnected and so apathetic that there's just nothing left. Oh, sure, they got the shiny buildings and the cars are going. And the thing I could think of that would probably best represent that is New York from the 1970s, right? There was all these movies and, they were writing off New York as a whole. And at the time, New York had, 7 million residents or whatever. And it was as big as most of the states, right? But they had written it off because it was so bad. That's the collapse I'm talking about. The government's still going to be there. I mean, the government specializes in keeping itself around. The government specializes in protecting itself first and foremost, but the functions within society would quit working. That, we're getting to the point now where you go to check out at a grocery store and there's just nobody there. I mean, I know that the futurists have talked about being able to just go pick stuff in your cart and walk out the door, but that's part of the community. And when that's gone, there's just a complete separation. That's the collapse I'm talking about. So what's more common, or not more common, what's more likely outcome here? We continue on to this collapse as I've described it, or the people of Texas decide enough's enough. We're going to do our own thing. Maybe we implement some of those things that I mentioned in yesterday's episode as far as, regenerative agriculture, smart energy production, smaller cities. These are all different things that maybe could return, have us another renaissance, if you will, via Texit. So again, what's the more likely outcome? And honestly, I'm at a loss. I don't know what that more likely outcome is. I know what I would prefer. I know what I would hope for, but I don't know. So again, I would tell you, now that you've listened to me, pick a side. You can pick a side that you think is purely more likely because of what you see, or more likely because that's what you would prefer. I mean, there's nothing wrong with wishful thinking. Make an argument. Put it in the comments. Respond. Let's be a little bit interactive in this. Let's make the most of this time. You've invested about 15 minutes of your time. If you're listening at double time, it's less than 10 minutes. It takes 2-3 minutes at most to hammer out a response. Let's see what it is. And that is according to Callus. I will see you on the other side. Thank you and good night.